Hello everyone and welcome to the show. I'm truly glad to have you joining me today. We are now up to lucky number 7 of a 9-part video series where I look at each of the 9 launch titles for the Atari VCS. Today we are looking at a fast-paced game which tests your ability to outmaneuver an opponent and making them crash into a wall or any of the tracks left behind. You in turn need to do the same. In this video, we'll take a closer look at Atari's Surround. And that is the topic for today's video. Before we get started, if you like my videos, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons below, and hit that bell icon if you want to be notified of new videos. It really helps out a small channel like this one and is highly appreciated. Now, on to the video. Surround was programmed by Alan Miller, who joined Atari in February of 1977, and was one of the first 4 Atari 2600 game designers. At Atari, he also programmed Basketball and Hangman. In late 1979, Miller left Atari and co-founded Activision with 3 other Atari programmers, Bob Whitehead, Larry Kaplan, and David Crane. They were disappointed with Atari's refusal to give them any credit for the games they developed. While there, he programmed Checkers, Ice Hockey, Robot Tank, Star Master, and Tennis. The artwork was once again done by Cliff Spawn. This is the last of the artwork he did for the launch titles, although he continued to do artwork for many games afterwards. In total, he did 6 of the 9 launch titles. As with previous games, Sears rebranded this as Chase. Not only is this unimaginative as the other titles they created, it's not even accurate as you are not chasing anything in the game. Surround is an unofficial port of the arcade video game Blockade, released the previous year by Gremlin Industries. It was a 2-player game where each player moves around the playfield, leaving a solid line behind them. The goal was to last longer than the opponent by not running into anything. The same year, Gremlin also released Commotion, a 4-player version of Blockade. The following year, they released a second 2-player version of Blockade called Hustle. This time, both players have 90 seconds to run into as many point boxes as possible. There are also mystery boxes shown as question marks. These have random values and sometimes remove points instead of adding them. These are the first of what would become known as snake games. Snake is a subgenre of action games where each player maneuvers the end of a growing line, often themed as a snake. The player must keep the snake from colliding with other obstacles and itself, which gets harder as the snake gets longer. This genre inspired numerous iterations, such as the 1976 arcade game Bigfoot Bonkers by Meadow Games. This 1- or 2-player game has the same objective, but they added an additional obstacle to avoid, Bigfoot prints, which appear randomly at the start of each new level. In 1977, Atari released 2 Blockade-inspired titles. The first was the arcade game Dominoes. Gameplay is a variation of the snake genre, in which players compete by surrounding each other with lines of dominoes. The second was the Atari VCS game Surround. This was the first home console version of snake-inspired games. Surround uses the terminology of leader block and tracks to refer to the snake. That same year, a similar game was launched for the Bally Astrocade named Checkmate. This is one of the 3 games built into the console. The second was Gunfight, which is like Outlaw for the 2600. And the third was Scribbling, a drawing program. Surround also has a similar variation called Video Graffiti. Checkmate is a 1 to 4 player game with up to 3 computer-controlled snakes. The notable feature of this game is once opponents are eliminated, their trails disappear, opening parts of the playfield once again to the remaining players. The first known home computer version was called Worm and programmed by Peter Trofanis for the TRS-80. The original basic listing for this was found on the Internet Archive. It was quite the adventure getting a TRS-80 emulator running and getting the code compiled. The object here appears to be getting your worm as long as possible while navigating around numerous objects. The complexity of the maze is entered at the beginning of each game. The popularity of the concept evolved to many different variants. Often the player's snake gets longer with each piece of food eaten, often apples or eggs. Nibbler is a single-player arcade snake maze game released in 1982 by Chicago-based developer Rockola, which at the time was mainly known for manufacturing jukebox machines. The player navigates a snake through an enclosed maze, consuming objects, and the length of the snake increases with each object eaten. When talking about snake games, you can't help mentioning Tron. One of the most memorable parts of the Tron films are the light cycle scenes depicting a full-scale version of the genre. The cycles are used as part of a deadly virtual game conducted by the Master Control program. In it, players must ride around in an arena without crashing into each other, the outer walls, or the light trails left behind by the vehicles. In the 1982 Tron arcade game, the light cycle sequence is included as one of the 4 subgames. The player guides Tron's blue light cycle in an arena against 1 or more yellow opponents. The simplicity and low technical requirements of snake games have resulted in hundreds of versions, some of which had the word snake or worm in the title. After a version simply called Snake was preloaded on Nokia mobile phones in 1998, there was a resurgence of interest in snake games as it found a larger audience. Surround does have some rather unique options for the time, and they are sprinkled throughout the 12 variations. The first option is what they call Speed Up. As your snake moves on the screen, at different intervals, the speed will automatically increase. There are 5 different speed levels, and by speed 4 or 5, you are not going to have the reaction time to make the turns, so it makes for some fairly fast rounds. The second option allows diagonal movement. I think this is pretty self-explanatory and can make for some interesting movements, especially combined with the speed up option mentioned earlier. The third option is a race. When you don't want to leave a track, press the red controller button. You will continue to move, but no blocks will be left behind until you release the button. Honestly, I didn't find this option very useful for strategic play. The fourth and final option is called Wraparound. This is really a wild option where there are no walls and your snake can run off the screen and then reappear on the opposite side. This can get frantic trying to keep track of what's going on in the round. Classic Surround and Speed Up are available as one-player games with a computer-controlled opponent. This is always appreciated as most of my gaming back in the days was solo. All the remaining games are for 2 players only. 2 additional variations provide a non-game mode called Video Graffiti, in which players use the joystick to draw pictures on the screen. As the manual says, you can write a word, draw a picture, or get as abstract as you like. Well, at least as much as you can when drawing with big playfield-sized blocks that are all the same color. The only difference between these 2 variations is one allows diagonal movement and the other does not. All in all, not too bad for a 2K cartridge. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but all the launch titles were done in the incredibly small amount of 2K. It wasn't until a year later when 4K became the standard size for most cartridges, which is still pretty small. In the winter 1979 issue of Video Magazine, the cartridge and games were reviewed and given a 9 out of 10 score, with variations 4 and 6 singled out for individual praise. Variation 4 was described as the best solo play version, and Variation 6, which allows diagonal movements, was identified as the best tournament game. Whether you're an Atari veteran or a newcomer to the retro gaming scene, Surround offers a unique experience that is hard to find in modern games. With its simple yet challenging gameplay, it's no wonder that the game has stood the test of time. Thank you for watching, and we hope you join us for future videos as we continue to explore the world of classic gaming. Until next time, happy gaming.